Good morning, everybody.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everyone. We want to welcome you to our webinar today with Anytime Collect. I know we're all excited to hear James's presentation for us today. Just a quick bit of housekeeping before we get started. This and all of our webinars are recorded, so this recording will be up on our website by the end of the day. That is innovia.com. And also, if you have any questions, go ahead and type them into the question box. We'll get them called out for you at the end here, and James will get them answered for you. So, James, without any further ado, I'll hand it over to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much. And I just want to thank Innovia Consulting for inviting us to do the presentation for you today. Very excited to be working with you guys. So the topic of the day, we're going to talk about how you can get paid a lot faster by using Anytime Collect, which is an add-on module that can be integrated with Microsoft Dynamics NAV, as well as other ERP applications available on the market today. I do have my contact information on the screen. We'll have that again at the very end if you guys have questions. You can, of course, ask questions during the presentation. We'll answer those at the end. And as always, I'm sure you can go back to Innovia Consulting if you have questions as well. So a little bit of a preface to all of this. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of accounts receivable. You know, and a lot of companies, they don't really realize how important AR is to the business. Across industries, if you look at your AR, it's typically going to be the largest or second largest asset in your business, which may be counterintuitive. If you're a professional service organization, you may think it's your employees. If you're a capital equipment manufacturer, really any type of manufacturer, you may think it's your equipment. If you're a transportation logistics company, you might think it's your trucks or your fleet. But typically AR is going to be right there, either number one or number two in your balance sheet. And your ability to convert your AR to cash faster will have a dramatic impact on your ability to increase cash flow and access to working capital. A couple statistics here that a lot of people don't realize. And we talk to people across industry all the time, and we ask them, you know, how are you doing with your accounts receivable? In almost all cases, they say, you know what, I don't know, or I think we're doing okay, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to give you some statistics here. On average, most companies are getting paid in about 61 days. That's what the industry terms as days sales outstanding. Okay. Now that doesn't sound too terrible, I guess, but most companies on average are extending net 28 terms. Now the standard is kind of net 30. Some in food and beverage, certain industries, you might have a net 10, you know, net 15. So the average is 28, but it's taking our customers across industries 61 days. There's a problem with that, right? If we wanted them to pay in 60 days, we should just give them net 60 terms. Of course, then they probably pay us in 90 days, right? We can help, okay? There are applications out there. Anytime Collect is one of them. There's certainly others out there in the market, but we'd like you to take a look at ours. Companies that implement solutions like Anytime Collect can typically reduce their DSO by a minimum of 10%, on average 20%. And what that means is that you can reduce your DSO by about 9 days if you're the industry average. And who doesn't want to get paid 9 days faster? We'll talk a little bit later. We've had some customers that have had significantly higher improvements in those numbers. One of our best case studies, very, very large company in the service industry, was actually able to reduce their DSO by 40%. And the net result was they were getting paid a month faster. It was absolutely amazing what we could do for them. So let's talk about what you guys are all probably doing today to manage your AR. You know, Microsoft Dynamics NAV is an absolutely fantastic ERP application, but most mid-market ERP systems do a fairly limited job, I guess, of helping you manage the AR, right? You can create the receivables, the invoices, you can maybe even send them out automatically. But then there's sort of like this dark veil that goes over the process, and you don't really know what's happening until the payment comes in. It's kind of like we hope, pray, hold our breath, and just wait for that invoice. We kind of shed some light on that. So instead of printing out aging reports, which I know all of you are doing, or managing data in disparate Excel spreadsheets, we're going to give you a system and a process to help you identify who you need to call, when you need to call them, and why, with all the information you need at your fingertips to be very effective in supporting your customers' needs as well as your own internal needs from a credit and collection standpoint. Something that we all know, and we'll put some stats to this as well, is the longer an invoice goes unpaid, the less likely that it will ever be paid, or at least paid in full. You know, this just makes sense. And some statistics, these were from the U.S. Census Bureau a couple of years ago. If you allow your invoices to age to 3 months, 26% of them are uncollectible, at least uncollectible in full, and that's pretty significant. If those invoices age out to 6 months, you're looking at 70% of them that are either uncollectible or uncollectible in full. And heaven forbid that we let them go out to a year. You're looking at maybe collecting 10% of your receivables. So the real lesson here is we need to be very proactive, especially early on in the process. We do not want our invoices to get to that point where they're even 3 months old. You know, net 30 terms, that means they're already 4 months from the time we provided the product or service. So what does automating your accounts receivable really mean to you? And these are some charts from PayStream Advisors, or an industry analyst group that monitor this space, really the financial supply chain area. And this was an independent study that they came out with just a couple years ago. Now there's 2 pie charts here. On the left side, we're looking at a traditional collections model. And this is your spreadsheets and your printed out aging reports. In that type of a model, you are spending so much time prioritizing who you're going to call or what activities you're going to do, preparing, getting all the information together to make the call, that it's limiting you to only 20% of your available time to solicit your customers for payment. Right? That's what we want to do. We want to talk to our customers, resolve issues, and get paid. Now, let's look over on the right side. With an automated accounts receivable credit collection solution like Anytime Collect, you're able to significantly reduce the amount of time you are prioritizing and preparing for those calls. What does that allow you to do? If you look at that burnt orange section there, you're going to spend 2/3 of your time talking to your customers. And wouldn't that be something that everybody should want to do? That's 3 times as much time and energy talking to your customers about payment and not on administrative tasks. A couple more points here. On average, most businesses are writing off about 4% of their AR annually. Now, it'll vary. You know, we've had customers that have said they had very little write-offs. You know, might be 1%. We've had prospects and customers we talked to that have been as high as 9%. So industry average of 4% is still fairly significant. But that may not sound like a lot to you until you really look at it in terms of overall numbers. Let's say that you're a modest-sized company. You're doing $10 million a year in AR. 4% is $400,000. How much more product or service would you have to sell to make up for that? In some industries like wholesale distribution, where you operate on like razor-thin margins, that could be a very significant increase in sales to make up for that amount of loss. Now, what if you could reduce your bad debt write-offs by just 10%? That's going to save you $40,000 every single year. And we've had customers that have had a much greater improvement in that number, 20%, 30%, et cetera. And I'll tell you right now, our software doesn't cost anywhere near that, so you're going to get an ROI in a very short period of time. So what we're really bringing to the table here is the ability to manage by exception. Okay, we don't need to look at the accounts that typically pay on time and have a current balance, or their balance is current. We want to know who are the outliers, who do we really need to focus our time on. And then we need a system to automate things that can be automated, right? We're in the digital world, there's all this technology out there, there's an app for that. Well, we've made an app for that. with Anytime Collect, we can set up the system, we'll talk about it here in a little bit more, so that the system will create a prioritized list of the activities that you need to focus on. Not the customers that are current, but the customers that are past due, and it'll put them in sequential order so you know which calls you need to make first. And let's say that the system creates these activities for you, and you don't get to them today, but in the meantime they make a payment, you come back in tomorrow, the system will automatically close or remove activities from your queue of things that you need to do, because guess what? They don't exist anymore, so you don't have to pay attention to those. It's not a distraction. You'll get things like notifications for high-risk accounts, so you know that these are customers that are maybe trending in the wrong direction. You can spend, again, a lot more time calling. You can focus on that top 20% of your customers, and we all know it's the Pareto principle, right? In our businesses, 20% of our customers typically account for 80% of our revenue. Well, if 20% of our customers account for 80% of our revenue, they probably account for 80% of our past due receivables, and 80% of our disputes, and 80% of our problems. So why don't we don't ignore the rest of them, but if we can focus on just that 20% and make an improvement there, we should be able to see a significant improvement across the organization. We're also going to be able to help you with the management by exception to reduce your call prep time, because all your information is going to be right there at your fingertips. I'll give you a couple screenshots here. We are going to do a live demonstration here, but I want to talk about some of the key components of the software. Prioritized activities. We have a rules engine that sits on top of the data, right? We're going to bring in open invoices, customer accounts, contacts, payments, payment applications, all that data that lives and is created within NAV is going to be synchronized into our application. And then we have a rules engine that sits on top of it and looks for those exceptions. So that rules engine can create the prioritized list of activities, which is over here in the action tab on the right and in the grid. And then from there, we can drill in and look at all the information around that credit and collection issue or activity, as well as information on the account. Automated communication. There's a lot of things that we don't automate that we should. And I'm going to give you a couple examples here. First example, how many of you on the call, you can answer this question yourself, send out reminders to customers before the invoice is past due? None of you. Guarantee it. Nobody does it. We never did before we implemented the software ourselves. The reason for that is because we're too busy chasing down people that are already late. This is something that is very easy for a system to automate. We could set up a rule on the data that any customer that has an invoice that's coming due in the next 3 days, 4 days, 5 days, where there's a balance due, can automatically receive via email a friendly reminder: these invoices are coming due, this is the balance due, oh, by the way, here's the attachment of the invoice or a link to go view them online. Please let us know if there are any issues, or make a payment online, or whatever your messaging has, or you would want that messaging to be. That's very easy. We can also automate the delivery of monthly statements. I know a lot of companies probably do that within the context of NAV, but if you're not, we can do that as well. We can also transmit or retransmit via email open invoices, past due notices, collection or dunning letters, and all of these can be built on different parameters. So when do you want to send your customer past due notice? And we can even get more granular than that. When do you want your strategic customers to receive it versus those, mom and pops that you might want to be a little harsher with? So we can have different times when messages go out. We can even have different messages that go out based on the customer type. Also automate things like new customer welcome, right, from the credit and collections department. Hey, we see that this is the first time you've ever bought something from us. Please let us know if you have any questions or any issues with the invoice or the products or services. We can even queue up a follow-up collection call for the assigned collector so they know to call on that first-time customer. We can also automate communications for requests for credit reviews. So if we have high-risk customers, we're tracking their credit scores in software. You can queue up a list of activities for the collector, notify the customer that, hey, we need to do a credit review with you, next month or in the next couple of days. And literally, if you can think of anything that you might want to email to a customer, good chances we can automate it. The automated email is defined from what we call a credit class rule. Again, that is specific to a group of customers. So you can really tailor these to meet your specific needs. And this is just an example of one email that you might want to send. And you can see in here there's a little hyperlink. You can click here to pay your account with a credit card in our secured self-service portal. We'll talk about that here in a little bit as well. We also can see in here with this automated communication that we included their current point-in-time statement of accounts. Let's talk about online bill pay for a minute. So a lot of companies, most companies, are still processing paper checks, which is fine, but it's kind of old-fashioned in today's day and age. And what we're really doing here is we're creating a barrier to our customers making a payment, right? First, we have to take the time, energy, and cost to physically print the invoice, put it in an envelope, post it, send it to them, hope that it gets to them, and in most cases it will, right? And postal service is pretty reliable, but in some cases it gets delivered to the wrong people, wrong department, gets lost in the mailroom. But then the customer has to take that invoice, they have to review the invoice, they have to enter it into their system against an AP voucher, they have to print a check, put it in an envelope, and mail it back to us. Now I know taking credit card payments may not seem like the best idea for a lot of you on the phone today, but if you look at the cost that it takes and the time it takes in that manual paper-based process, you may want to reconsider starting to accept credit card or at least ACH payments for your products and services from your customers. In the manual process, we talked about it, these are all the steps they go through, and it can take a long time. We can minimize that with what's called EIPP, which is Electronic Invoice Presentment and Payment. You create the invoice in NAV, we sync it, we set up the rule to automatically send that information to your customers via email. They open the email, they click a link, takes them, logs them into an online portal, they pay the invoice online, and all you have left to do is reconcile the credit card payments. You can literally go from weeks to months on the manual side to minutes to hours on the automated side. And this is just an example of what the customer portal looks like. So when the customer logs in or clicks the link to log in, they're going to see all their open invoices online. You can see we have a PDF icon there, so if they want to see the actual invoice image, they can click there to view that. We also support what we call supporting documents. So I'll give you a couple examples here. That folder icon next to each invoice would store documents related to that invoice. If you're in transportation logistics, you might have a freight invoice that might be attached. If you're in distribution, you might have a bill of lading. You might have a proof of delivery document that's been signed by the customer. If you're in professional services, you may have an employee timesheet that is supporting that invoice. And a lot of customers, in the professional services industry do want to see the detail behind the invoice. Why are you billing me for this time? So we can store those types of documents there. Customer simply selects which invoices they want to pay. Click the Make a Payment button. It's going to pop up a screen where they can fill out their credit card or ACH information, depending on how you have the system set up. And we'll validate it. Payments come back into our system as pending payments, and you're done. Okay. Talk a little bit about invoice disputes. Anytime that you're operating in an industry where you're extending credit terms to your customers, there's going to be a chance that there's an invoice dispute. And some research out there, about half of all disputes may be related to missing or incorrect purchase order information on invoices. Now, one of the cool things with Anytime Collect is the flexibility in it. So let's say that we have a customer and they require that their purchase order number be on our invoice that we're sending to them, or else they will not pay us. And that probably sounds familiar to a lot of you on the phone. We can use a user-defined field within our software where we designate which customers require the PO number to be on the invoice. We then synchronize that data in from Microsoft NAV, and we see that that customer who requires the PO has an invoice we just synchronized, and lo and behold, the PO field is blank or null for you developer types out there. Basically, it's missing. We can create a notification so that your credit collections team automatically knows that there's a potential payment issue with that invoice. And that's just one example of how we can improve the process even on the dispute side. And we all know this, the key to resolving invoice disputes is to identify the dispute very early in the process. We don't want to allow this to linger out there. The longer it sits out there, the less informed everyone is of what the dispute is. And then sometimes the customers, they're going to basically set their own terms. Well, the invoice was in dispute. You guys shipped it the wrong date, or you shipped us the wrong product. We're not going to pay. So they basically start the clock all over again on their own terms from the date you've resolved that dispute. So that's kind of the high-level overview. Let's show you the software here. So this is Anytime Collect. The application is deployed via any of your popular web browsers, so Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, Mozilla Firefox, doesn't really matter to us. A couple things, you will see it is available in multiple languages, so you have English or Anglicized or British English, as well as Spanish, Portuguese, and Hebrew. We have a partner that resells the software in the Middle East. And all you're going to do is log in. Each of your credit collection team members will have a username and password. Click the login screen, and that's going to take us right into the software. And the first place you're going to probably go is to your dashboard and find out some of the key metrics, key performance indicators. And this is based on data that we're pulling in from your ERP system, from NAV, as well as information that we're collecting and entering within Anytime Collect. So I'm just talk real high level about some of these KPIs that we provide. The first is a projected cash receipt. So this is statistical based on your customer's payment history. So you have, let's say, 100 invoices that are open currently in the software. We can look at each of the customers. We can look at the size of the invoice, and we can look historically and figure out, based on the data, how long does it take customer ABC to pay a $10,000 invoice? Well, they typically pay 10 days late. Well, if that invoice is due today, we can statistically project that they're going to make a payment on that 10 days from now. So that would fall into the next 14-day bucket. Okay. Now we're doing that across every customer that we're synchronizing that has an open invoice across every invoice. So this is going to give you kind of a rough cut statistical cash projection, something that nobody could do realistically within their ERP system. And these are hyperlinks, so if you want to drill down, it's going to provide a grid of data that'll show all the invoices that we expect to be paid within those different buckets. Scroll down a little bit further, you're going to have your current AR aging. Okay, probably not that big of a deal. You can get a lot of that information out of NAV. However, you can see that I am logged in as Art Vandelay. Well, Art Vandelay might only manage the top 20% of our customers. This aging is going to be specific to the accounts that Art is managing. So it may not be the entire AR portfolio. It could be a subset. Okay. We can look at the AR aging in respect to the invoice due date or the invoice creation date. And we can also change the setup parameter if we don't want to look at 30, 60, 90, 120 day buckets. We can use that in NAV as our setup, but within Anytime Collect, we might want to collect based on the due date and break that down into 5, 10, 15, 20 day buckets, whatever really makes the most sense for you. We can also trend our average days late, so we're looking at the individual due dates for each of the invoices, not just by customer, but down to the document itself. So you might have one customer, their standard terms are net 30, but you had a special deal where you offered them net 60. What we really care about is the invoice late or not? And we can trend that over the last 6 months in the number of days late, which is the blue line, or the number of dollars late, which is the green line. Now again, most of our customers that are implementing the software within the first year are seeing an average of about a 20% reduction in their DSO or their average days late. And that's just by being more proactive and having a process in place. In respect to DSO, you will get that number here, so you can trend that and find out how you're doing. The cash summary here below is just a snapshot of what's happening. What cash did we receive? What cash did we expect to receive? And that's based on promise to pays and things I'm going to show you here in a little bit. How much do we have in dispute? If it was a valid dispute, we can exclude it from our aging within Anytime Collect so it doesn't trigger future activities for the collection team. Over on the right, you have your average days late by the size of the invoice. And you guys can either define this or allow the system to create these different buckets for you automatically based on the data we're synchronizing in. So this is going to paint a picture for you if your customers tend to pay later on large dollar invoices, or maybe you're always calling on the larger invoices, so they've been trained to pay you slower on the small invoices because you're never going to call them on it. We have this data again at the portfolio level, looking across your customers and invoices. We also have this information down at the account level as well. Below this, you have your activities. The way the system's organized is much like a CRM system, where you have issues and then activities within the issues. So a credit issue could be something good, could be something bad. Typically something bad is a customer that owes us money and they're late. So we need to make a phone call, send an email, manage a dispute, do something to resolve that. But it doesn't have to be. It could be a customer in good standing, but we need to do an annual credit review with them. It could be a customer in good standing requesting increased credit limits or changes to the credit terms. So we'll have a count of all the open and closed issues for this particular user. How many activities are they managing this week and last week? How many did they complete? And of those activities, how many were phone calls, emails sent, emails received, notes they made, disputes, expected payments, or broken promises? And then finally, over on the right, we have our top customer list. This is the who has my money list. You know, with every grid in the system, we can sort this down if we want to look at our top 10 customers who have a balance over 90, which is inclusive of over 120. Simply click on that and drill down. You can always change the page size as well. So let's talk about kind of the real value here of the software, and that is in the automation. So we've set up the rules engine to look at the data to create the activities for us, and that's going to appear over here in your Action tab. So what is the first thing Art Vandelay is going to do when he comes in? He's going to probably look at his customer actions. He's got 2 high-risk customers that have a late balance. High risk, better call them first. Next thing he's going to do is he's going to work on 4th collection calls, right? These are starting to age to the point where they could be a risk for non-payment, a serious risk. He's got 35 of them, so Art's got a lot of work to do. He's basically going to work through this list until he has nothing left to do, which is a real-world kind of goal, but in practicality, you may never get to that point. The real kind of message here is that we want to focus on the more strategic and important activities first, as opposed to getting down to a new customer welcome call. While it's important, absolutely we should do it. It can wait if we have a customer that may not pay us that's high risk. So all you do to work on your list is you click on whichever area here you want to drill into. So we're going to start with our 4th collection calls. And I can see that these are all the customers. The system created the activity for us automatically. And we can kind of cherry pick this. Maybe we know we want to start with Hansen Corp. Now we can go right into a communication, make a phone call, send an email. Or in a lot of cases, we may not have all the information we need about the customer. We're going to simply click on the customer, and we have some options here. I want to open this account, look at their detail, and create a new communication. Okay, let the GoToWebinar catch up to us there. There's a little bit of a lag with the GoToWebinar software running. So the first thing you'll see here is we have Hanson Corporation, okay? So here's the new communication. It created it for me automatically. It's telling me basically what do I need to do. I'm calling on this particular invoice. This invoice triggered this activity for me. But they may have other invoices out in the system, and while I'm talking to them on the phone, I may want to review those, so I can simply toggle between those. Now let's take a look down here. If I just scroll down on the screen, I've got a full statement of the customer account. This is all our financials coming out of NAV. I've got open invoices, payments, credit memos. All of that is going to appear here. Same information that your customers would have in the online portal. I can also see all the communication that has happened with this customer, much like a CRM system. And I've got some different invoices here, or icons. For each of the communications that have occurred historically, I can see, was it a phone call? If it's red, it was late. If it's green, it was completed on time. If it's blue, I still need to do it. If we have this icon here, I can see we received an email back from the customer. If it's time sensitive, we can set up activities for your collectors and give them a number of days to complete them. If it's red, it's late. Green, you did it on time. Blue, you still have time to do it, but you better get it done. If there's a dispute related to that communication, you'll see the question mark icon. Tagging allows us to tag or relate invoices to each of the emails or phone calls that we make. That way we can go back later on and find out, well, how many times did we try to call on this particular invoice? The currency icon here indicates that we have a expected payment or promise to pay. And then we have the email envelope out here, which indicates we send an email. And at the very bottom, you can make general notes on the account. Maybe their AP contact only works Monday, Wednesday, Friday till noon. So any contact notes, account notes you want to make can go here at the bottom. So let me show you real quick how easy it is to manage your credit collections. So we're going to go ahead and make a phone call. Maybe this isn't just a phone call. Maybe this happens to be a new customer call. First thing is you can set up procedures, basically instructions on how to perform a particular activity within the software. Could be a full-blown call script like this, or could just be talking points. New customer welcome call. Call them, make sure they got the invoice, make sure there's no problems, thank them for their service, whatever you want them to talk about. So that's always nice. We can go ahead and view all of the contacts. Again, these can be imported from your ERP system. If you're using a Skype plugin, and you could just click and call. Otherwise, you just pick the contact you want to talk to, add them to your account notes. It's going to put the notes in there for you. You're going to make that phone call. They pick up. You can mark you spoke to them as opposed to leaving a voicemail. And then you can make a note here. And let's say that Tristan, for some reason, didn't get the invoices, wanted us to resend them, promised to pay online. So resend invoices, promise to pay $500 online by end of month. Okay, so any of the notes you want to make about the phone call or that particular communication can go in here. I can also tag that I talked to them about maybe a specific invoice or multiple specific invoices. Maybe they have a dispute on an invoice. We can go ahead and select that it's in dispute. We can pick a reason code that you can define. Maybe the bill of lading was wrong. Maybe there were damaged goods. Maybe the freight was wrong. Maybe it was a missing purchase order. Okay, so these are all user defined. You guys can set them up and get analytics around why you have invoice disputes to begin with. And again, you can drill in, look at the PDFs of the invoices, supporting documents, and more information about the invoice itself. So let's go ahead and log an expected payment because, for example, here Tristan said he's going to pay $500. And he's going to pay it by the end of the month, so we'll go ahead and put that in here. Now, if they promise to pay and we don't have a payment that's synchronized in from NAV for $500 for Hanson Corp by the end of the month, what's going to happen is over here in your Action tab, you're going to get a list of all the broken promises to pay. The other thing that's going to do is it's going to track that for each of your customers in the history. Okay, we'll let the GoToMeeting catch up here. On the history tab for your customer, you can see how many times have they broken a promise to pay or had a dispute from 90 days out to 2 years. You can see a lot of other information here, always available from the drop-down. Average days late for this customer based on the size of the invoice. Aging based on the due date. We can see credit information, when were they established, what's the credit class that dictates the rule set on when activities are triggered for them. What's their currency, their highest balance and date, credit terms, days past due, credit limit, available credit. Do we allow this customer to make a payment online? Are they in credit hold? What's the date of their last or next credit review? What's their credit score? Lots and lots of information here. Info tab, general information, right? Where are they located? Who's the sales rep? What company within NAV are they associated with? Yeah, are they a subsidiary of a parent? We do support the parent-child and a national account structure. User-defined fields. You know, this is one I was talking about earlier. I set this up, didn't exist until I set it up in my system. This is a customer that doesn't require the PO to be on the invoice, or I could go ahead and change that. Contact information is here. We can maintain that within the system. We can also define which contacts within the system are included in our automated email, because we may want to have 5 or 10 or more contacts, but only a couple of them receive the automated email. Transactions, what are their recent payments, most recent first, and what are their oldest open invoices. And then last but not least, if you happen to be familiar with the National Association of Credit Managers, they have a trade credit report, and members to the NACM organization, we have an integration for them so that we can pull credit reports from the NACM trade credit report database. We populate that data here within the software. We are looking at ways to integrate to other credit reporting bureaus as well. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do here, now that we've reviewed all that information about the customer, is maybe we want to attach the tagged invoices to the email. Boom, got it. Now we're going to create a past due notice or whatever letter template. You guys can customize these, create different iterations of them. I'm going to go ahead and create that past due notice. And there it is. Now let's go ahead and create the email. Now from an email perspective, we're creating the email from within our software, typically sending it out through a hosted email provider. You can create like a GoDaddy account or something. So maybe your company is Smith's Apples or something. You could create a subdomain called ar.smithsapples.com or credit.smithsapples.com. It's nice to keep everything in a separate account because all the inbound and outbound communication, much easier for us to integrate that within the system. If you absolutely must have integration with your Microsoft Exchange or other email servers, that is also possible. So we've got good old Tristan here. We'll go ahead and send him an email. But instead of creating the email from scratch, I'm going to go ahead and create it from a template. These are the same templates that we can use for automation, or you could use basically to shortcut having to type the same message over and over again. So I'm just going to pick our past due notice. And there it is. Now I can edit it before I want to save it. In this case, I'm just going to send it. You'll see there's some funky code in here. This creates that secured hyperlink that the customer can click to pay their bill online. Okay. Next step, if we want to, we can manually schedule a follow-up. We can assign things. Maybe we need to escalate this to our supervisor. The rules engine within the software also allows for automated escalation. So maybe anything over $10,000 past due or anything over 30 days past due automatically gets escalated to somebody else. Maybe any invoice that's in dispute automatically gets escalated to somebody on your team. We can handle that as well. Okay. So all we're going to do here is save and send, and that's going to then send the email over to the customer. We'll go ahead and log into our Gmail here. Refresh. And there it is. So see a couple things. I've got this ID. This is the issue ID within our software. If the customer replies back to this email, we're going to retrieve it automatically from the email server and tag it back into the original issue. You'll also see that they have their attachments here, and all they have to do is click that link, go online. It's going to log them in automatically, and they can pay their bill online. Okay. A couple other things within the software. Go ahead and cancel that. I have an issue with my particular demo image here. We'll see that that did in fact complete. Come down to our communications. Looks like GoToMeeting's hung up here. We'll let that catch up. There we go. Go ahead and refresh. So that communication I just made, we had a phone call to Tristan Waters. We had a phone call. We had a dispute. We tagged invoices. We logged an expected payment, and we sent an email. And I can mouse over this to find out what did I actually put in for notes. So full documentation of everything we just did. I'm going to run out of time. A couple other points here I want to make. You also have user actions here at the top in addition to your broken promises. If you have follow-ups past due, you can drill in on those. If you have mail that's been received from your customers but is not read, it'll appear here. If you have email that maybe they deleted that special ID that we use to tag it back into the issues, it will still come in, but it'll come in as unfiled. That way you have notification, and there's a way to reconcile that back into the issue. Customers can also make notes online from the portal if they want to communicate with you there. We do also integrate with live chat, so if your customers are on the portal, they can chat with you online about invoices, and all that chat communication is stored within the software. And last but not least, there's a lot of inquiries in the software. A couple popular ones are things like invoices. So I want to look at all invoices across all of my accounts. Simply go into that inquiry. Boy, the webinar here is really slow today. Or maybe I didn't click that. Let's go ahead and do that again. Yeah, it must be the GoToWebinar here. Sometimes this does slow us up slightly. So there we go. So this is an example of one of the grids in the system. What's nice is you can apply filters on any of these, and you can also apply alerts to them. So I'll give you an example of this. Maybe we want to look at any invoice that happens to be in dispute. I've saved an alert called dispute. And the way I did this was basically filtered my grid to look at any invoice that is marked as in dispute that is not resolved. Okay. Now you can create filters on any of the data within the software. It's very intuitive. You know, maybe I want to look at balances. Maybe I want to look at all kinds of different parameters and create these predefined filters. I can then save it as a setting, which is what these are here, or I can save it as an alert, which you can see from the icon. This one's an alert. Click the alerts icon. You give it a name. When you go to save it, it's going to ask you which users you want to receive this alert. These can be full credit users, maybe a supervisor, maybe the user themselves. Could also be inquiry users. We find often that companies like to notify the sales rep assigned to the account anytime their customers happen to have a large dispute or any dispute at all. So some of these, like Karen Wong here, happens to be an inquiry user. And the other thing you can do with the alerts is schedule when you want these to occur. I'll actually want to process that. I meant to click the schedule button. So when do you want this alert to go out? Maybe you want it to go out basically every Sunday, and it's going to run hourly every hour between midnight and 12:30. So it's basically going to kick off once. So a lot of parameters around when you want the alerts to go out via email. Okay. Last but not least, we do have embedded support within the application, so you can get into our support knowledge base. We have an online community where you can interact, kind of like a lot of the publishers have an online user group, so you can access basically the knowledge of other credit collection professionals within that organization. You can also log support requests. You can look at tutorial videos. You can review documentation all within that support center. So that's a real high-level overview of Anytime Collect. Let me go ahead and switch back to our slideshow. I just want to share a couple quotes with you here. We truly believe that Anytime Collect is a better way to get paid faster. So a quote from one of our customers. Anytime Collect provides our credit managers and collection reps with more information than we've ever had before, providing the insight we need to act instead of react to outstanding accounts. Major features, we talked about a lot of them here: automated email, customized templates, prioritized calls, disputes, business intelligence, integrated document management, multilingual, both from a user perspective. You can also translate reports, letters, communications for customers and may require a different language. Cash flow forecasting, centralizing all the data. You don't have to work in NAV, CRM, and email. Everything's in one place. You've got the credit and risk management, the integration to your ERP data. We can also work in a team environment. We didn't really talk about that, but we have customers that have over 100 users. We have some customers that only have one. You can set up reporting hierarchies, who reports to who. You can set up teams. So all that's available. The email alerts and user notifications and escalations, as well as payment schedules, which we didn't talk about. Those are also part of the software. The way that we integrate with Microsoft Dynamics NAV is via CSV file. It's a scheduled data sync. Once we set that up, once it occurs, and unless you change parameters on that, you never have to go back and change it again. What data are we integrating from NAV? We're bringing in customer accounts and contacts, open invoices, payments, payment applications, the ERP company data, right? Because you could have multiple companies within NAV, your sales reps, and there's actually some other stuff that we bring in as well. Everybody wants to know, how do we buy it? How do we deploy it? You can either buy it outright with a perpetual license. Typically, that's the way we've always done things. Or the new way is to go with a subscription. We do support both models. If you go subscription, it's pretty affordable, $150 per user per month. Deployment, most of our customers these days are going with a cloud deployment. We are a Microsoft Azure partner, so your data is secured on Microsoft Azure. We provide the automatic updates to the database and the client there. And there is also an on-premise option. It is more expensive if you want to install it on a server that you host internally. Implementation and training typically is somewhere between the 16 to 24-hour range. It can be a little bit more if you're getting a little more complex with the rule set, more complex with different types of reports, or you have more users. But it's probably a good ballpark, and that's all build time and material as incurred. We talked about the embedded customer support portal, and really the big benefit here is you're going to get paid about 20% faster with an ROI typically in about 2 months. I invite you guys to take a look. If you go out to the Anytime Collect website, we have an ROI Calculator. You can enter your financial information, make some estimates. Do you think you get a 10%, 20% improvement on your DSO? Different parameters, pretty simple. And you enter the number of collectors that you would have using the software. You click Calculate, and it's going to tell you what your potential ROI will be in respect to dollars, as well as payback in period in terms of month. A couple other pieces here, and we'll wrap up. We do also partner with a number of different people out there in the industry. One of the companies we work with is Dunn Collecting. It's Michelle Dunn. Very knowledgeable in best practices in accounts receivable management. If you need more consulting on kind of best practices and not necessarily the software, we sell a resource kit in tandem with Michelle. It's a one-time cost of $800. The big benefit here is that you get to talk to Michelle for 2 hours. She'll give you some personalized training and consulting. She's owned collection agencies and is very well respected within the industry. We also deliver with the software some of her sample call scripts, as well as some of her sample collection letter templates emails. In addition, we have a number of other resources available on our website. We can make these available to you via Novia. Things like our 2015 Accounts Receivable Credit Collection Software Buyer's Guide. We have white papers galore on topics ranging from how many people you should have staffing your AR, to how to manage disputes, how to create a credit collections policy, as well as over on the right we have our resource guide with umpteen links to PDFs and videos that you can watch to get more detail on each area of the software. I'll leave you with this. Anytime Collect is a much better system than the $1 million system I used before in the areas that it performs the same tasks. This is from a long-standing customer of ours, Kalmbach Feeds. And with that, we are going to wrap up with questions. I'll turn it back over to Abby here. I do have my information up on the screen, but as always, you're going to want to contact Innovia. They know your business. Talk to them about the product, and then they'll engage us as needed.
Awesome, James. I do have just a couple questions here for you. The first one, how long has the product been available?
That's a great question. So we initially developed this product, I think it was 2008. Unfortunately, back then, we were working only with a different ERP product. It was Sage 500, which is very comparable to NAV. And with that initial release of the software, we wrote it within the SDK that was available. But we soon realized that there was a big market need outside of that customer base. So we rewrote the application in .NET, I think that was in 2010, and made it available for really the rest of the world, anybody regardless of their ERP application. We then took it into 2012, so 3 years ago, and ported it completely to the cloud. Again, can be installed on-premise, hosted on an internally hosted IIS server. So the long story short is that the product's been around for quite some time. It's been through 3 major rewrites. It's really matured through the years.
Our next question, what is the implementation and training process like?
That's a good question as well. So what will happen is if you're interested and you sign up for Anytime Collect, the first step is we'll have a discovery kickoff with our project team. And we do this for everyone, regardless of whether it's a really small implementation or a very large, complex implementation. They're going to talk to you about what that process is going to look like. There'll be a project manager involved. There'll also be consultants involved. The first step is to do the administrative training and setup. So we'll set up your users. We'll show you how to create the workflow and the credit class rules. We'll make sure that all the data that we synchronized in matches the data you expected from within your ERP system. So we do a little validation there. We'll show you how to set up and configure the email templates as well as any of the report templates that you might want and alerts. That system admin kind of power user training and setup typically takes about 4 hours, sometimes as much as 8 hours, could be a little bit more depending on the complexity. The next step then, which will typically take place about a week after that, is your end user training. So once you have the system set up, we'll go in and we'll show the users how they're going to use the application. And we make it very proactive. We want you to understand how to set up and work with the system because at the end of the day, it's your software. It's just another tool that's available to you to help gain some efficiencies within the business.
Okay, James, and we have one more question here. What security measures are in place to ensure the safety of our data?
And that's also a good question. So I mentioned earlier we're a Microsoft Azure partner. So we don't, there's a lot of companies out there that do hosting. That's not us. We're not a hosting company. We don't know all that security stuff as well as Microsoft does, and that's why we partner with them. Azure. So your data is stored in a secured Azure account. It's either multi-tenant or single-tenant. We do have policies and procedures in place. There's only, I think, 2 people within our organization that have direct access to that data, and they can only access that data with your permission. And In addition to that, with customer-specific data, we have customers that are in the medical industry that have HIPAA compliance. So you can rest assured that we support that as well. We also partner with a company on the credit card and ACH side for PCI compliance. We don't actually store credit card data. We're passing to them tokens, and they're simply retrieving your card from a secured and encrypted PCI compliant vault. And there's a lot more to the security, but in a nutshell, those are some of the things that we do to really ensure the security of your data.
Well, James, that is it on the questions. We want to thank you again for that awesome presentation. And I want to remind all of our attendees that if you want to review the presentation or if you want somebody else in your organization to be able to view it, we did record it and it'll be up on our website by the end of the day. That's on innovia.com. So James, thank you. Attendees, thank you. And we'll see you at our next webinar.
Excellent. Thank you again.